Please be seated. Well, normally, today we would be celebrating the 9th Sunday after Pentecost, but August 6th is the day set aside as the Feast of the Transfiguration. And as such, when it falls on a Sunday, it takes precedence over all other Sundays. And so, the feasts of the Transfiguration, the Ascension, all the feasts that we celebrate are days which reveal something about Jesus himself. Today we commemorate Jesus going up to the mountaintop with Peter, James, and John, and how his glory was revealed to them. Dazzling white, and how we hear God speaking. This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. Now, transfigure is not a word when was the last time you used the word transfigure in your daily speech? I'm guessing it's been a long, long time, maybe a year ago at the earliest for most of us. More appropriate, or not appropriate, but a more common term maybe that we use might be alter, or one that we really latch on to is transform. And I believe that when we talk about the transfiguration of Jesus, or the transformation of Jesus, if you will, that we face an interesting question, and that question is, who is it that is being transfigured? Who is it that is being transformed? For yes, we know that Jesus' face and body and clothing changed to be dazzling white, and that change was only visible to the three disciples, Peter, James, and John. But I think it was really Peter, James, and John who were transformed that day. Their eyes now open to see Jesus as who he really is, as the Son of God. Beforehand, they thought that maybe they were following just this amazing spiritual guide or spiritual teacher, but now they get the sense of this call that they have been woven into the fabric of God's plan for the world, to transform the world. What experiences do you have that frame the way you see and understand the world? Much of the way that we experience the world comes from those things that we really had no control over. Who our parents were, family of origin, where we grew up, what language we speak, if you will. But sometimes we have moments of clarity, which allows us to see the world in a new light, maybe a bird's eye view. And these are moments when it seems like we can see beyond ourselves and beyond our own limitations into the heart of the reality of God. While I was preparing this sermon, I thought about how that might relate to me. And for me, I came up with 5 real significant periods or times, instances really. And the first was the birth of our children. Another one was my Curcio weekend, when I had this tangible act of healing done for me, which continues to this day. Another one was the ordination to the priesthood, as I lay prostrated in front of the bishop with 4 other candidates and had hands laid on me by many other priests. And then the 35 days I spent walking across Spain with my son on the Camino. And the last one is something that just happened in the last 2 months with a small group of people from this parish who we shared time together in Jerusalem when we were in the dungeon reading Psalm 88 in Caiaphas's palace, which is believed to be the dungeon where Jesus spent his last night. Those are all times when I think back that I was in the presence of God, and God was with me. And I pull on those things to remind me when I fall away. Because transformation is the natural consequence of being in the presence of God. We can't help but be transformed and changed when God is with us. Now, Jesus took his disciples up to the mountaintop because Jesus knew that God was there. They were on a quest, actively seeking God's presence. Like Peter and James and John, God is calling us to climb that mountain with Jesus as well. As I said, Jesus leads us up there because that's where God lives, and we need to know where God lives. And if you recall from this morning's Old Testament lesson from Exodus, Moses was just coming down from Mount Sinai, and his face shone differently than it had been when he left to go up there. God is found on the mountaintop where the vision is clear and the noises of the crazy world don't infringe upon our senses, our ability to find God and see God wherever God is around us. But even though it is easy to know that we can find God on a mountaintop, that is not the only place that we can find God. Hopefully, all of us came here this morning because we thought we could find, or were hoping to find, a little piece of God here in this place with these people. God can be found for many people in the natural order, watching the stars at night or sitting on a seashore watching the waves crash. When you're lost or wondering what's next, those are good places to go to return to remember that God is there with us. But like when I was talking with the children, the problem is that we find ourselves wanting to stay in those places. I mean, the children said Disney World and Washington and Wisconsin. I think I would have liked to have stayed in Jerusalem. But that's not me. That's not my people. That's not where I'm called to go. So I came back. And there are places like that for each one of you. It could be in the kitchen. It could be in the woods. It can be on a mountain. It could be on a boat throwing a line into the water. It could be on a golf course. I mean, there's just as many variances in this group as there are people. But we can't do that because God calls us to come down from the mountain. Calls us to come down for that experience because we have seen that experience. We have experienced that experience. And it is now our responsibility to take that transformative love of God out into the world, to share it with everyone, to share it with everyone that we meet. And in this parish, we're going to do a little bit of that this week. Family Promise arrives this afternoon, and many people have signed up to spend the night and bring food. And I would encourage all those folks who are doing that to sit at the table with those people and when they eat their meals and hear their stories. Because in reality, their stories aren't much different than our own. They've just hit on some hiccup and you will be fascinated and amazed by some of the ability of these people to overcome. And going back, I think that these special moments, these times like the Cursillo I mentioned, the Jerusalem visit that I had, or what, and your all's, that if we really think about it, everything that affects us that way, if we look back and try to connect all the dots, they all go back to the presence of God in our lives somehow. All the time, everything. And I think sometimes that's just where we need to go. We just need to get to that point where we are able to take that experience and say, this is a God moment. How is it? Track that whole thing back, and you will just see the presence of God in your life over and over and over again. And so I encourage all of us to take that step, to take that new step, to step over that threshold, to realize that in all the experiences of life are God moments. And that we are called to find God in the marginalized, in those who don't have what we have, who don't look like us, who aren't like us, who the immigrant, the Palestinian, the Muslim. We are called to take that transformative love that we have brought down from the mountaintop, and we are called to share it with the world.